The Zuiho is the first premium aircraft carrier to be introduced into this game. Hello, I am Xarkun, and this game is World of Warships Legends. Today we're going to talk about the Zuiho, but before we begin, we should note that Wargaming posted an announcement in the official World of Warships Legends Discord server to address some players' concerns about this ship. They said in near future updates that its concealment will be buffed and its credit earnings will be increased, so keep that in mind if you feel like you want to buy this premium CV. I'll tell you though that there isn't a whole lot of difference between the Zuiho and the Ryujo, other than some pretty significant variations in plane stats, and I'll go over those in detail. But other than that, I'd say it plays pretty much exactly like the Tech Tree Tier 5 IJN CV, and if you don't like that ship, you're probably not gonna like this one. But let's talk more about it. Before we do, we'll glance at my commander build and mod selection, then as usual, we'll jump into some gameplay and go over the ship's stats. The game I have for you is quite an interesting CV game where I managed to get a solo warrior, so let's get to it. Mod selection, I've got Flight Control Mod 1 in the first slot, and in the second slot, I've got Air Groups Mod 2, basically the two mods that affect the plane squadrons. And of course, my commander is Taemon Yamaguchi, with Swirsky and Space Fishy as his inspirations. Swirsky decreases ship detectability, and Space Fishy increases torpedo speed. Onto the game, we will be on, what is this map called? Neighbors Domination Mode. And like I said, I get a solo warrior in this game. How it happens is actually quite interesting, and we'll point that out once we get toward the end. But before that, let's talk about the ship stats. So first up, the Zuiho has 36,500 hit points, and we're going to compare it to the Ryujo, since that is the most logical comparison. Ryujo, of course, being the Tier 5 Tech Tree IJN CV. The Ryujo has 39,600 hit points in comparison, so about 3k more than its premium counterpart here. And really, that's where the significant differences stop, aside from the differences between the plane squadrons. And the main difference between the aircraft carried by Zuiho and Ryujo is that Zuiho's aircraft are stealthier and tankier. I think noticeably so, particularly with respect to the tankiness. Tier 5 AA, in particular, doesn't seem to do too much to these planes, unless it's highly concentrated, i.e. you're going to strike a cluster of ships grouped up together, then you might start losing planes quickly. Otherwise, these planes seem to take a lot of punishment before they actually go down. We'll break down the stats now by bomber types. So first up, the Torpedo Bombers, which we don't have in the air. We have the HE Bombers in the air, but the Torpedo Bombers have 2,783 hit points compared to the Ryujo's Torpedo Bombers, which have 2,530. So they got about 200 more HP than the Ryujo. They have a 6.5 km detectability by air compared to the Ryujo's 7 km, so they're stealthier by half a kilometer. 137 knot top speed compared to the Ryujo's 152 knots, so these planes are stealthier, but they are slower. It's a 6-plane squadron, of course, with 2 plane attack units. The torpedoes do 7,315 alpha strike, which is the same as the Ryujo. Likewise, the torpedo speed is 53 knots with a 4.5 km range, again, same as Ryujo, and it takes 62 seconds for the aircraft to replenish, same as the Ryujo. And the same is going to be true for these torpedo bombers in terms of alpha strike fire chance and restoration time. Those are all going to be the same as the Ryujos, but for the torpedo bombers, they have 2,431 hit points compared to the Ryujo's 2,214. They have a 7 km detectability by air, and the Ryujo's bombers, HE bombers, have a 10 km detectability by air, so they're significantly stealthier on the Zuiho than the Ryujo. 142 knot top speed on these HE bombers compared to the Ryujo's 159 top speed, and like I said, same stats, 9100 HE bomb alpha strike, same as Ryujo. 55% fire chance, and 58-second restoration. So basically, these are exactly the same planes as the Ryujo. They're just sneakier, and they have more hit points, so they don't seem to take quite as much punishment. As for the rest of the ship stats, we're not going to talk about the secondaries on this carrier. They do exist, but we're not going to talk about the secondaries because the secondaries are useless on all aircraft carriers in this game, no matter how much any particular player might wish them to be useful. They just aren't, so don't even try to use them. No reason to talk about them. The Aaa Defense Rating on the Zuiho, though, got an overall rating of 54 for whatever that's worth, 5.3 km maximum firing range, and rather low DPS per second. Ryujo, in comparison, has an Aaa Defense Rating overall of 63, so supposedly it's better. I mean, I haven't really been attacked by aircraft too much directly, or rather the carrier itself here hasn't, so can't really say too much about the Aaa defenses. You can see we've shot down 3 planes so far in this game, but I think that was from our fighter squadrons. As for the maneuverability of the aircraft carrier itself, 28 knot top speed in the water, same as Ryujo, 910 meter turning circle, which is actually a lot wider compared to the Ryujo's 770 meter turning circle. And the Zuiho has a very responsive rudder shift for a ship of its size, 9.6 seconds, compared to the Ryujo's 13.4 seconds. Also, the sea detectability range of the Zuiho is 10.1 kilometers by sea, compared to the Ryujo's 7.9 kilometers by sea. And keep in mind that that stat is influenced by Jerzy Swirsky as one of the commander inspirations, and I think that is what Wargaming was referring to in their announcement when they said they were going to buff the concealment of the Zuiho. Not that I think it needs it. I think the 7.9 km concealment by sea of the Ryujo is a little bit ridiculous, and I really don't think it really needs to be lowered from 10 kilometers, which is, somewhat reasonable to me. By the way, we were in the midst of 2 enemy ships overlapping Aaa bubbles there as we struck the Peter the Great with our torpedo bombers. Now, those, I think, are both Tier 4 ships. No, the Budyani is Tier 5, but you could see that we were able to drive around with our planes in that Aaa for quite a long time, and you can see, just how tanky it is. The Torpedo Alpha Strike is nice, too, and these torpedoes, when you have the reticle lined up properly, and you have aimed for long enough, these torpedoes seem to stick together. They don't really spread out too much, and in fact I've been able to launch the 2 of them directly at the bow of a battleship, and they basically stick right on top of each other in the water, so they don't spread out a lot. They're fairly easy to hit. The high explosive bombers, too, also extremely easy to hit. For whatever reason, they sit up quite high in the air, I think. I haven't actually played the Ryujo all that recently, so maybe this isn't a fair comparison, but I feel like the Ryujo's high explosive bombers do not fly quite that high up in the air. The bombers on this thing, the HE bombers, fly as high up in the air, it seems to me, as the German AP bombers, so I don't really know what that's about. Nevertheless, it's very easy to hit these bombs and these torpedoes on ships, provided you're practiced enough in CVs, and you can put out quite a bit of damage. There we get the kill on the Peter the Great, still flying inside the Aaa bubble of this Budyani, and you can see, the plane's taking damage, but it's taking quite a long time for the planes to go down. In fact, it's taking so long for these planes to go down that we might actually be able to turn around and get some torpedoes on this Budyani. So, yeah, these are tanky planes. The torpedoes with their Alpha Strike is quite solid, hits hard, and the HE Bomb Alpha Strike is quite solid too. This is a Tier 5 carrier where you can do a significant amount of damage over time, despite, your rather limited ordnance. You're only dropping 2 torps and 2 high explosive bombs at the same time. I should note, though, that my team here is currently in the process, or they were in the process of taking the Bravo cap. The Monte Cuccioli inexplicably left the Bravo cap for no reason that I can discern, so we don't actually hold it. He was only a couple seconds away from capping, but we do have a friendly battleship headed there right now, and I'm bringing my CV out this way. The game right now is 4 versus 4, and we're almost even on points, although my team is ahead of the enemy team on points. I think our battleship, who is being harassed by the enemy aircraft carrier, is moving into Bravo, and this will become significant. But, you know, as we fly out here to deal with the majority of the enemy team's remaining surface ships, we have no idea where the enemy aircraft carrier is. I'll talk about, you know, how this carrier plays. It's a carrier. Whether you like aircraft carrier gameplay and you find it interesting, personally I don't. I think that's going to determine whether you really want to purchase this particular premium ship. As a Tier 5, you know, it's not as powerful as it could be. The Tier 7 carriers are all significantly more powerful, but you can have a good deal of success in it. You can massively influence the outcome of the game by spotting, you know, destroyers, and in fact, with the Zuiho in particular, using your high explosive bombers to spot destroyers is actually quite easy. The increased concealment on the planes does two things, I suppose you could say, and I guess this is the main difference between the Zuiho and the Ryujo's planes. The decreased concealment radius of the planes, theoretically, gives your enemy less time to react to your planes, because you can get the planes closer to the enemy without the enemy spotting them, right? Although in practice, I don't know how well this actually works and how much extra time the enemy has to react upon seeing your planes. But the other thing having a low detection radius on the planes does is when your planes are spotted in the air and you don't see anything within their detection range on the surface of the sea, well, just like in a surface ship, you can know that it's a destroyer spotting your planes. And if your detection radius in the planes is, say, 7 kilometers, like it is on the HE bombers, well, then you know there's a destroyer on the surface within 7 kilometers of your planes. Versus if your detection radius of the planes is 10 kilometers, then you've got a much wider search grid for that destroyer. So that can be kind of helpful, I suppose. And there you can see, I think, that those two torpedoes, they're practically hugging each other in the water. And actually that battleship is able to dodge one of them, but you see we're able to turn around here and we're able to strike him again with at least 2 more torpedoes, no problem. These planes also do seem to regenerate, you know, fairly quickly, even after they go down, and I have yet to be deplaned in this thing, but things aren't going so well in this game right now. My team is down 3 ships to 4, but the key here is that we do have control of both Bravo and Alpha, whereas the enemy team only has control of Charlie. They've got 3 surface ships left. None of them are anywhere near the Bravo cap, and really that is going to come back to bite them. What they're trying to do now is finish off the rest of my teammates, and you can see that they're getting quite close to my aircraft carrier itself. I'm actually about to be spotted. This is a mistake on my part. I managed to get too close to these ships, and only now am I turning around. I should have turned around quite a bit earlier. Coming down for a drop on this warspite, you can see just how long you have to aim the bomb drops. It's a very, very long amount of time. And when you've got that reticle over a battleship and you're near the end of that aiming time, well, the reticle basically covers the whole battleship, and it's pretty difficult to miss the bomb drops. If they penetrate, of course, they're going to do a fair amount of damage, and they do have a good fire chance, so potentially you could stack permafires on there if you can get the planes to the enemies fast enough for them to, you know, be hit by a bomb or a torpedo, get flooded or lit on fire, then use damage control, come back, rinse and repeat, that kind of thing. At least I think that's probably the strategy for the CVs. We've got this, what is this cruiser heading in now? He's very close to us. He's about to spot us. London And actually, I think we're a little bit so concerned about his spotting here that we might mess up this torpedo drop. The London is going to be able to turn and dodge those. Not ideal for a very maneuverable vessel like a cruiser there, but again, these planes flying around in the AA bubbles of all these ships here, you can see that they're still flying. I'm still able to get off another strike on this Warspite, so very forgiving. Very, very forgiving. I think a little bit more forgiving than even the Ryujo, and there I am being a potato again in this CV, not moving it away from these guys. They have now spotted me, and honestly, this last sequence here, this is amusing, right? So I'm the last ship left alive, right? There's 4 enemy ships. There is a Budyani, a London, and a Warspite. They can see me. They're all shooting at me. The Budyani and the London are both shooting high explosive, but only from their front guns. Actually, I think the Budyani is shooting armor piercing at me, and while the Zuiho isn't like super well armored, right? It's not going to get overmatched by 152 millimeter armor piercing shells, so you really shouldn't be shooting those AP shells at an angled aircraft carrier like that. The Warspite is also shooting at me from distance, but it looks like his shells are coming down through the deck and actually over-penetrating. So I still have, a little bit less than half my hit points left. They are going down, but because that Budyani insists on shooting what I think is armor piercing at me, they're really not doing as much damage as they could, and I really only need to get one more hit on the Budyani to take him out. He's got no health left. Points are at 579 to 678 in favor of the enemy, but if I take out this Budyani, we're going to get a points lead, right? So there's the torpedoes in the water, one going right for his nose with 30 seconds left in the game. Takes him out, 632 to 637, but again, we hold 2 caps. The enemy holds 1 cap. So we've overtaken them on points with less than 20 seconds left to go. And now the only way they can actually win is by killing me. But they aren't going to be able to do that for whatever reason, which frankly is amusing. So there's the solo warrior in the Zuiho. Closing thoughts on the ship. It's a tier 5 aircraft carrier. It's a premium. Eventually it's going to have increased credit earnings, so you might want to get it just for that. You can see the credit earnings here are nothing to, shake a stick at, but neither is the base XP really. Decent game though in the carrier. I think it should give you some idea of how this thing is going to perform. Frankly, it's tricky to review these aircraft carriers in comparison to the surface ships, so I hope you found this helpful. If so, give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.